can't wait to watch the Bulls game on my new TV. I knew it. Okay, move, boys. Here we go. Bulls.
Yeah, Furkan Korkmaz, he was killing us those 2 games, especially the second one. Yeah. George Niang, like, killing us off the bench.
Did you see that quote from Embiid? He's like, when they asked something about like, what do you think of him? He's like, well, originally I thought he sucked, but now I'm glad he's on our team. Like, he just said that point blank.
You know what's crazy though? I feel the same way. Like, even when outside looking in, it's like, man, he's not that good, but he makes stuff that not to say you don't expect him to make, but like, he was making some tough shots, especially the first game. DeRozan had a nice contest on a couple of those elbow threes, and Niang ended up, I think, with 18 points and being a huge difference maker, making clutch threes too in that last part of the game too. So that was something I was really surprised about. Just Philly's willingness to incorporate their role players early in the season. Like, obviously, it's because of injuries, but the fact they're able to get this experience, that's going to help them out in the long run. Niang later in the season might not be as hesitant to take a shot, and he's already that type of player anyway. But the fact that he was able to come in and be successful, same with Tyrese Maxey, who's made a huge jump this year, guys like that who are, in different situations, but they're able to contribute on a contending team, but they're getting their roles established really early now. So
right,
it's been a blessing in disguise for them, honestly. Tobias Harris, you know what you're going to get from him, 20-plus points a game. Danny Green, obviously, championship experience, defense. Threes when he's in a decent rhythm. Sometimes he's completely off, but usually he'll make them when they count. But the guys like Maxey, role players like Niang and Korkmaz, Shake Milton, Matisse Thybulle, who played that first game, great defense. I like the role players, I really do. And then you want to see that internal growth. That's how you make that leap from being, a decent team. And the Sixers were contenders last year. They just kind of got hurt. They weren't fully healthy, right? They're missing who are they missing in the playoffs? Or I don't know if they're at full strength. They might have had everybody, but I don't think everybody was fully healthy.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where people were kind of hobbled throughout the end of the season.
Right, yeah. But I don't know. I think they did prove themselves this in this back-to-back stretch, and I think that was really important for them to do. On the flip side, for the Bulls, it's just frustrating because they lost both games in the same way, essentially. They got off to a rough start offensively. They couldn't really recover. They made a late push in the fourth quarter, but then they made some just weird mistakes and just weird execution down the stretch in terms of like either taking a shot too early. We saw a couple of the Zach threes in the first game, like with the 5 or 6 minutes left. You're down 2, taking some tough shots. Like, you don't need to make a momentum, like, hit a home run at that point. Just go to the basket, get to the line. Keep the game kind of in your favor that way. But it's a good learning experience. I didn't like the fact they lost back-to-back to them, like I said, in that same way. But hopefully they can walk away with some solace. Like, even though the Sixers were at full strength, they're not that far off from where they're going to look, what they're going to look like at the end of the season. Obviously, Tobias Harris is a huge part of that, but that core group of guys, the role players who are going to step up, these are the same type of guys you're going to see. And the Bulls role players have to be able to match that. Derrick Jones Jr. played well that second game. Ayo had some nice moments throughout the 2 games. It's just they have to get used to playing these great teams and competing with them at a high level, which they're not there yet, we see, but they're on the way, I feel like.
Yeah, well, for me, the issue I had, which is kind of, I guess, connected or bridged to what you mentioned, is the first game, Embiid probably played like 65% of his capacity, 70.
So yeah, terrible game.
So yeah, it was a terrible game, right? So it's like with the team they had, they're not completely full strength all the way around, and with Embiid having a subpar game, and we still lost. That was my immediate reaction to that first game of the series, and then the second one, it was just the fact that okay, now you take out Thybulle, and you take out. Was there an additional person?
Yeah, Isaiah Joe. He didn't play that much in that first game, but
right?
Yeah.
No, I remember seeing like the pregame info on players who were out, and they just had a super long list. But then you just reminded me some of the players weren't as significant as others in terms of minutes. But Anyway, yeah, the fact that like Thibault was such a huge part of their defensive success in that first game. So with him being out, and then for us to still be struggling to score and find offense, it was definitely a little concerning for for me. Um, in addition to all the obvious things people are pointing out, right, about the Bulls basically digging themselves into these giant holes, and then you got to work 3 times as hard to get out of it, right? Like the Boston one, that was a cute little story, but like they all know that's not sustainable in terms of having consistent success, I'll say. Um,
Right.
so I just hope that somewhere down the line of the coaching staff, they can make it imperative to not have these habits form now, right? Like they got to nip this right now. Um,
Yeah.
because I feel like this is how the team has spiraled in years past, right? Like they just start developing this same habit, right, of digging themselves into a huge hole, not having the right amount of energy, what have you. And it may be fair, like maybe this team is a little tired and dragged down from the tough competition, really starting with New York. Like the games have definitely ramped up each and every time, so maybe there is an element of fatigue there, but um you're hearing them say all the right things, right? We can't play this way to sustain success, things of that nature. So yeah, I just hope the coaches can impart to keep that energy starting the game and reduce those habits from forming now.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you said, they gotta nip that in the bud right now because you can't, as you can see, as we've seen during the stretch, you can't get away with that with against good teams.
No.
There's ebbs and flows of every game, but if you get off to bad starts consistently, teams also scout that. They know that they can jump on you, and the Bulls don't have, once again, they don't have a very strong bench offensively. So we're not gonna get back into the game by hitting a barrage of shots. We're gonna have a starter out there with a lot of guys who can mix it up defensively, create transition points. That's what that's where they're best at. The bench had 13 points against Philly in the first game. Second game, I think 27. That's still not a high number, but you can't count on that type of production, or we can't really count on that type of offensive production. So what we need to do to get out at the outset of games, like we alluded to on the last episode, Vooch has to be established, and they tried doing that. He's
They
just off
they
right now.
did.
You know what I mean? They tried. They made a point to give him the ball early, especially this the most recent game yesterday, second game against Philly. They got him the ball early. I think he had like maybe like 6, 7 shot attempts, had like 4 points, 4 rebounds. I don't know, 4 rebounds. I think at the end of the first quarter, he was kind of more active than we've seen him in past games. But the fact that he hasn't settled into his role as the third guy yet is a little, I wouldn't say troubling because it's still super early, but it has to be something that has to be a point of emphasis because, like I said before, if he's not in a rhythm, that throws everything off for the potential of this team. Because yeah, we can fight back and get back into games because of the strength of DeMar DeRozan being able to slow it down, get into the line, Zach LaVine being explosive. But if Vooch doesn't have that presence, or if he's not in a rhythm, he's just gonna go through the motions. He'll put up okay numbers, but he's not gonna be able to be as effective as he should be.
Let me ask you a question though. So before the season started, let's say before preseason, before all that hype started to build, did you consider Zach the one on this team? And then in terms of the two, was it a split between DeRozan and Vooch, or did you have DeMar as the second guy before the season started?
That's a good question. To me, I always felt it was Zach and then sort of a 2A with Vooch and then DeRozan,
Exactly.
just because
That's what I
of
was gonna say. Yeah.
I mean, look, we grew up like you got to establish the big, and the fact that Demar can get his own at any time is incredible. And the fact that once again he has that second stint, that lineup where he's playing with the bench guys, and he's featured there. There's no, he's option 1 and 2 on every possession. He can create and get his own shot, obviously. So Vooch doesn't have that sort of lineup. He doesn't have that featured time. They have to mix that up. But when you have to give him his rest and then get Tony Bradley in the game, or mix and match and go smaller sometimes with Alize Johnson, or there's different things you have to do in the ebbs and flows of games. And then also he has to stay out of foul trouble too. So it's a lot of things where if he's not effective early, then once again he's just gonna go through the motions, have an okay game, and they just can't afford that. He's also too good for that, and people they're gonna start wrongfully saying that he's not as good as he is or he's overrated. It's just not true. He's very good. He's just not, like I said, in a rhythm yet because you're taking a guy who was like don't know his usage rate or anything, but obviously in Orlando he was being used as the A guy for a long time there, for at least the past 4 or 5 years, especially last year. Gets traded to Chicago, you're still like you're kind of 1B with Zach. Now you go from that to three, and even like I said, some nights Lonzo will even get like more attempts to be more aggressive. So it just can't happen. They have to establish him early. They got to give him a lot of just touches. He has to be involved a lot, plain and simple. And he has to convert too. At the end of the day, they got him touches last game. He has to be consistent and do his role. So
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to
he has
remember
players in it.
he got traded for a Wendell Carter and two first round picks. So it's like when
Right.
you trade all of that away, you're expecting that all-star caliber talent, right? It'd be a lot different if you didn't give up all of that. But I think his expectations for his production is going to be linked to, the haul that the Magic got for him.
Exactly, and it's always interesting because like it's not like we traded for him and there's a pre-existing injury. It's weird because we had the trial run last year, if you would
We
call it
did.
that, where incorporating him in the system, but adding a guy like DeMar DeRozan who is so good and he's not ball dominant, but he's gonna get up a certain amount of shots. He's gonna have the ball a lot and dominate in that sense where you want him to. You want him to create and do a lot of other things in terms of like being aggressive as a scorer, getting to the line, and finding teammates and whatnot. But Vooch, you have to work him in. You have to run a lot of pick and roll, pick and pop, like a lot of things to some post up. Like and it's weird because he's had some bad matchups this couple of games. He's had Rudy Gobert, obviously Joel Embiid, like just excellent defensive centers and just all star guys, top of the line centers. So we'll
Don't
see.
forget when Embiid went out, then he had Drummond to contend with, and
Right.
he's not a super defensive stopper as what he used to be, but he's still a huge body to deal with.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, he can still get more rebounds than you. And he's still tough to deal with on the offensive end. If you're smaller than him, because he'll just back down. No matter if he's going to make the shot or not, he can, opportunities can come out of that. So I don't know. I think they have to once again establish Vooch as that all star guy because if teams start to look at that and his production starts to waver, you go from 24 points a game to 13. You're not scary anymore in a sense. Like we're not as threatened by you. We're trying to stop these other guys or know that if you have a big game, then he becomes the Bulls' X factor. Like he shouldn't. That just shouldn't be the case to me. He's too good to be an X factor. Like play good sometimes, and like no, he's an
Right.
all star player. Like he's a go to guy in a sense. So I just hopefully they can turn around with him sooner rather than later. Honestly, but it's a
Yeah.
rhythm thing to me.
Yeah, one problem I'm having with watching this team play is it feels like just for them to get 100 points always feels like a dicey proposition until like it happens, and then they usually they've had some games where they had 111, 128. So they get up there, but just in terms of like it always feels like a grind for them just to get to 100, and it's like in this modern NBA, like that's not something you want to be worrying about with your team because obviously it's a three ball heavy league as well. The Bulls aren't super great at that at this moment. Um, so yeah, factors like that really make Vucevic's production all the more relevant, right? So even when he starts hitting those wide open threes that he's missing, that'll raise the Bulls' percentage there.
Right.
But also it just makes things easier on. I'll just say specifically Demar and Zach because as you see, they're kind of going all right, you take over the game, or I'll take over the game kind of a cadence, and
Right.
that's fine for this like first third of the season, but like come the second and the third, like they're gonna start getting tired. So that's where you would like to see a bit more of that balance. Like we said, if Zach is the one, then the 2A 2B is Vooch and Demar splitting that, and that like metric or dynamic will probably work the best in terms of just evenly distributed success.
I think so too. Yeah, I think there does need to be some sort of like hierarchy established, even though it's more underrated now. Like we kind of just know the roles or know like that. 1A, 1B. It's like obviously like Levine and then DeRozan now, and then Vucevic after that. But he has to be like in that conversation where I'd much rather see 25 from Levine, 24 from DeMar, and then 22 from Vooch. If that means other people can chip in, we can get to that 100-point mark. For us, it's just filling in and getting to that mark with these other pieces. So like if obviously Vooch has a 4-point game, where are we getting this other production from? Where are we getting this other scoring? The bench scoring is going to be an issue all year long. I mean, obviously until Kobe White comes back, but it's going to be a big issue for the Bulls because when you're playing these better teams, a Sixer team with Shake Milton, Niang, Korkmaz off the bench, guys who can make plays and erupt for big nights, the Bulls don't really have that type of guy right now. If a great night off the bench, our score is topping out at 16 maybe. Like if Caruso had 16
Right.
or Io, DJJ had 12 the other night. If he had 16, that's a great night. That's an amazing night off the bench for him. So it's like until we can count on Kobe getting that 12 to 15 or even possibly 15 to 18 if he can off the bench and be like a Jamal Crawford type or Lou Williams back in the day. We're going to have that type of bench because the surrounding defensive pieces around Kobe are better than they were a year ago. So he can just focus on scoring, I feel like. So until he gets back, we're going to have to be creative in terms of filling that other void of production because Lonzo's not a big scorer. Zach's obviously going to do his thing, but the subpar Vooch games are going to kill us when we don't have good bench
Right.
production, which that can be any given night with the bench production. So Vooch can't fall in that same boat of inconsistency in terms of, he might have 4 points this game, he might have 20. He can't do that. He's also too good to be doing that also. So
I actually watched his highlights from right before he got traded and the last time he played the Bulls. I watched it earlier today, and it's interesting because a lot of his touches are coming in the post in these highlights. Like there's definitely some pick and pop in there. There's definitely times he's out at the top of the 3-point line in the center, kind of doing the handoff thing that he does a lot of at this point. And I think honestly that's where I see him the most uncomfortable, being like way,
mhm.
way, way at the top, just kind of, looking who to distribute to. And it's not to say that he isn't capable of it. It's just like, are we really utilizing him to the best of his ability? Because to connect back to my original point about that highlight video, it's like if you watch that video, there's a lot of like mid action going where like he's crossing across the paint and catching it in stride, hitting people with hooks. But then he also it's a healthy dose of him on that block, like just pounding away and then methodically, taking his time going over either shoulder. And it's just like he looks so much more comfortable. Like I want you to look at that after we finish this. Like just you can see the comfort in that highlight tape. And then if you look at how he's playing now, it's strange because these are wide open shots that he's capable of making. He knows he's capable of making, but he's just missing. And so like at this point it has to be a mental thing, right? And so
Oh, for
Billy
sure.
Donovan Billy Donovan has already said, right? It's just him getting comfortable with playing with two other high quality offensive players and the entire offense not being run through him, right? Um,
Right, yeah, that's a big adjustment,
yeah,
man. Also, gotta consider he's never played with this type of talent before. Like those Orlando teams were more defensive oriented, and in a lot of
right.
cases on the up and up. Like Aaron Gordon wasn't what he was now. John Isaac in and out of the lineup, guys like that. Like he never played with the peak of those great Orlando teams with some great offensive players, especially nobody to the degree of like Zach or Demar. So
No, yeah,
it's a big adjustment. Stuff like you don't, and definitely I didn't really anticipating being this big of an adjustment, especially with kind of how he and Zach played last year. It wasn't like a natural chemistry, but I think it's just you need to establish your role or your guy. Also, one thing I love about like for instance the Lakers, even though Rondo has like certain deficiencies now, whatever. Like obviously he's a great leader. You won in the locker room. Won a world title with them a couple years ago. They brought him back in large part because They got Schroeder a year ago, and he threw 0 lob passes to AD. Like, now they got Rondo back, but they had that connection since the Pelicans. They have that connection where AD can get easier baskets sometimes, like when he has Rondo out there, because he's looking for him with the lob all the time. Who is Vucevic's P&R partner? Who's the guy on the pick and roll who's going to look for him to get shots consistently? Who's going to look for him on these entry feeds? Who's going to look for him just in general? There's been plenty of times where Zach, who has kind of has to get better at this, where just you have to keep your head up. Vooch was Vooch was wide open a few times in the corner. Same with the Alonzo that he just kind of missed. Not used to making that extra swing pass to a guy who can actually knock the shot down. So I think he just has to get used to that as well. Teammates are missing Vooch for sure, but gotta knock down the looks too. Gotta knock down the clean looks. The looks you are getting, gotta take advantage.
Right. Yeah, no, it'll definitely be interesting to see how this plays out. Because like we said, he's just so crucial to the offensive success of this team. Um, and the most frustrating part is just the fact that we all know, him included, that he's way better. So it's just one of those things where it's going to take time.
Yeah, man, that it's crazy. I didn't expect going to tangent about Vooch like this, and it's
Me
not. Yeah,
either.
we're not like obviously not downing him or nothing like that. Like we just know he's capable of, obviously. So
Right. Yeah, no,
hopefully,
it's equivalent to that coach who's like really hard on a particular kid, and that kid's
right.
like, "Ah, man, why is he riding me like this?" And it's like because he sees what he's capable of. That's all. So yeah,
I
it's
got.
all from a productive spirit.
All right, let's switch gears real quick. I got a couple questions for you. Well,
Yeah, what's up?
a main question what I've been thinking of. What do you think is more troubling so far?
Mm.
The lack of bench production or the lack of size or the lack of positional size? Because I feel like both are hurting us in different ways. And maybe we're only seeing it a little bit right now because we're still fighting back in games and small lineups are working. But do you think the lack of size is something that's hurt us a little bit more than just like the lack of production, like a 3-point shooting, that kind of stuff? Like what do you think's been like the most glaring issue in terms of the three lost or even just any like throughout the entire season so far?
That's a good question. The first thing that came to mind when you asked that was probably the lack of size. I feel like due to the lack of size, the Bulls mentally immediately started to compensate for that by playing very hard, right? Like a lot
Yeah,
of players on this team instinctively play hard, but I think when your coach is preaching that we're going to play small this year and outwork and out hustle people, then you take on an additional layer of playing hard, right? And so that's the other part I worry about, where it's like that can last for a segment of time, but then I feel like you're probably going to see what we're seeing now, which is this energy slide. Because it's like to play that hard to compensate for that lack of height, I think fatigues you faster than a team that's a bit more balanced with something like that. So my
right. Yeah,
worry my worry is they may get fatigued in like dips like this throughout the season, just based on them trying to compensate for these other athletes that are much bigger and stronger than them. So in terms of the bench production, I feel like I don't know. I have an inkling that Kobe's going to come back and really stabilize a lot of that. Like the amount of offensive production he's going to provide, I think will allow the other players to take better shots, if that makes sense. Like
yeah,
at the
or just
very
get easier looks. Yeah,
yeah, easier looks. Like at the very least, Kobe White's going to take, or let me rephrase this. At the very least, I want Kobe White to take 6 threes a game.
yeah. Hey,
Like
me too. Me too.
I'm perfectly fine with him getting up his shots this season because that's specifically what we need from him. Especially if we pair him out there with Caruso. So based
Right.
on
Yeah,
that,
Caruso will find him so many easy looks off like
exactly.
just deflections. Just so many ways to
Yeah,
score. I feel like with those two.
they're gonna develop a nasty connection. I can't wait for that. But in the meantime, it's like the more shots Kobe White's taking, think about the bench that's taking shots right now. That means they're taking less, right? So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
kind of where I see the efficiency part stepping up for those guys, and the shots they're going to be taking are going to be more in line with the players they've been in the past, which I think will probably be the most successful version of them. So, long story short, I'm gonna go with the height and like size factor being more prevalent than my worry about bench production.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I don't like that, but I like that answer. No,
Do you have a
it's.
different
I
take on
think
that, or how do you feel?
no, I think you nailed it. Honestly, I think size matters in the league at the end of the day. It just does. I mean, I
It
don't
just
care how you
does.
spin it. It just
Yeah.
does. You can be as talented as you are. If the Suns had JaVale last year or months ago, that whole series would look completely different, in my opinion. Just off that alone. That's a great. I think a perfect example. They were up 2-0.
Yeah.
I think they got outsized by the Bucks. Portis came in and killed them, playing the 5, even though he's a natural 4. He's more of a 5 now, but if they had a big man that they could throw out there outside DeAndre Ayton, I think they would have a better chance. Same with how like the Lakers when they stacked those bigs a couple years ago when they won. Same how I think Miami might have to get another big because they're positionally small with Tucker and Bam, 6'6", 6'9". I just think at the end of the day, you can play small and have extreme success, but you're going to lose in the margins. A lot of the margins are the rebounding. A lot of the margins are you overcompensating with the fatigue and defending these bigger guys every single night. Javonte Green probably can't contribute offensively, even though he's not explosive offensive player regardless, but he's not going to have a huge 10, 12-point night. We're not going to see that from him. We're going to see him more in that PJ Tucker role where he's going to score 3 points because
Right.
he has to guard these he has to guard these big guys, these guys just way, way bigger than him. And he has to play at a certain level so he's not getting dominated by these people. I think the positional size is a factor. I think we're going to have to get another big. Honestly, Derek Jones Jr., though, I got to single him out. He's doing great so far, in my opinion. He's
Yeah.
doing great as a shot blocker. He's a tough guy to score on. I saw Niang a couple times, like, try to get his 3 off, and Derek Jones just get a piece. Like, he drove a couple times. He's just really good at anticipation with blocks, and he's so athletic that he can get to stuff that obviously most people can't. He's playing that role as a rim protector at the 4, and then also scoring a little bit too, getting out in
Right.
transition. My worry though. Wait, go ahead.
No, go ahead. And I got 2 questions for you related to this.
Oh no, I was going to switch gears and say my worry though is the lack of 3-point shooting, and specifically the lack of 3-point shooting off the bench. We have
Right.
no shooters off the bench right now. Caruso can make threes. He's not high volume.
And he's
Derek
not
Jones
making
doesn't. Exactly, yeah. And I think over the last 3 games, we've made 1 3 off the bench or something like that. Io hit that 1 3. Like, and you can kind of remember when they hit threes because
Right.
there's just
No,
not that many
exactly.
shooters off the bench. And if you can remember that, that's not a good sign. But
No,
yeah, go ahead.
exactly.
What were you saying? You want to switch gears
Yeah,
again?
no, yeah. So on the Derek Jones Jr. part, in terms of, do we agree that he should start? Let's start with that one. Do you
Hmm.
see any future to him being in the starting lineup?
Definitely. You
Okay.
can't. You realistically cannot play Javonte Green against certain matchups, and I think that's. Hey, it's actually a good leader because we play the Nets tomorrow on Monday.
Right.
They start. Wait, is KD at the 4 or the 3? Who? What is their 5? It's Harden, Joe Harris. Who else they start? I don't remember.
I haven't seen a Brooklyn game this year.
I was about to say, I thought this was our first Nets game of the season too.
Right.
I saw them a little against the Pistons the other day, and they didn't look that good, but
Mm.
I don't think they're taking them that seriously. Brooklyn starts. Come on. NBA.com is to load faster. Okay. Yeah, they started today. James Harden, Bruce Brown, KD, Joe Harrison, Blake Griffin. So I guess you can go with them because Bruce Brown essentially, Javonte, I guess, would guard him, right? Or well, I mean, DeRozan would have to guard KD. Yeah, well, I guess Javonte's guarding KD. See, yeah.
I
Okay,
would put
Derek
Javonte on
Jones.
to start. To start. Now, how long that lasts?
Nah,
Probably not
see,
long.
see, in matches like that, just the aesthetic, I have to start Derrick Jones. I have to. I can't start
I do like
Javante
that.
there
Yeah.
because you also Javante is he'll be a complete non-factor in that scenario because KD is also really they're gonna have him roam, and if he's the guy who's defending Javante on the other end, he's gonna have to do nothing, literally
Right.
on defense the entire, and then just roam. And KD's so good at just putting his hand in passing lanes and you know getting on the weak side for blocks, that kind of stuff. If he's able to have that much free reign, Bulls can get off to another terrible start, and that's something that's been harming us against these other good teams. Javante, that's another thing with essentially playing 4-on-5 in terms of offensive production. I think Derrick Jones might be a better guy to have in the starting lineup because instead of maybe around 2 to 10, 12, or 2 to 8 points from Javante, Derrick Jones maybe get close to 8 to 12, closer to what Pat would get, for instance. So,
Right.
but the only problem with that is off the bench, that potential production's gone. So another guy like a Troy Brown or somebody would have to duplicate that, which we haven't really seen that as much in terms of a consistent guy where, okay, we know he's going to score 10 even off the bench this night.
Right. So, well, my second part to that was when would you do that? And are you doing a spot kind of change, or is this at a certain point in the season you're just the guy until you're not, sort of deal?
That's a good question. I think Billy Donovan's going to have to wrestle with that the entire year, I guess, if Pat's out and they don't make any trades, because these are the only two guys who realistically can play power forward. I mean, you can try Troy Brown, but he's not in the regular rotation right now, so you're
Wait,
not going to
yeah,
jump him.
where's Troy Brown been? You just
Ayo,
reminded me. Hey,
Ayo,
Ayo just took his minutes. That's crazy.
yeah, that spot is gone to Ayo now. I think who was it? It was Caruso off the bench first last game, and then Ayo and Derrick Jones came off the bench right after that second rotation.
Wow, he's so much buried on this roster right now. I legit forgot he was on the team.
Yeah,
I
and that's
haven't,
what I'm
I
saying.
haven't seen Troy Brown.
And that's what I'm saying. Like guys like that, like he's played that role before though, where he's had inconsistent minutes. Same with Derrick Jones. He wasn't playing the first part of the season because Pat
Right,
was healthy. So
right.
I think Troy Brown's not a guy who can he hasn't shown the right consistency yet anyway. But I don't think he's a guy where okay, he's not playing a couple games, he's gonna be complaining, that kind of stuff. So that's good. We still have him in our back pocket where he will contribute at some point again this season. But I I do like to ride with Ayo now. He's making decent decisions off the dribble. Like he's kind of learning on the fly versus these very good teams. I really want to see what he does tomorrow against the Nets, for instance, because they have a lot of veteran guards and how he defends them. I thought he did a good job this
Patty
past
Mills
week on a couple
should be
guys.
interesting.
I know, man. If you gotta check Patty Mills, it's gonna be tough. You gotta
Oh
run
man,
around and he's gonna be shooting threes nonstop. You already know.
right.
But I want to
Yeah.
see that response to that type of environment. I like what he's been doing so far, though. Unless you're an Illinois guy, so I know you got some good things to say about him.
Well, no, for sure. I mean, you can't expect more than what he's doing at this point. Because there was talks before the season started of he might go to the G League, right? Just for the sake of getting some minutes. Not that he wasn't capable of playing at the NBA level yet.
Right, and it's
But
crazy how quickly it turned where we need his minutes now. Like we
right.
need him
Isn't
to
that
play well.
interesting? We're only what, 8 games? No, 9 games at this point.
Yeah,
And yeah, we're relying on him at some points, first man off the bench, or in that first unit off the bench, I should say.
yeah,
So, yeah, it's funny how that narrative has changed very quickly. It's nice to hit him. It's nice to see him hit some big threes at this point.
yeah,
Classically, he's not a sharpshooter from three, but at the same time, to knock down huge, big moment NBA threes is promising for just being able to hit them, right? You're showing the league, okay, when they're doing their scouting in a series or something like that, okay, this guy's capable of hitting this shot, which means a lot, whether you're knocking them down all the time or in the position to do so. The fact that you're capable of it, I'm glad he's showing that. Like you said, making good decisions off the dribble, driving to the rim. has been good to see. He's been finishing as well, right? He's not just getting there, blowing by people, but then missing. Like he's actually finishing. Um, and then yeah, it just feels like his defense. He's learning a lot game by game. Like the confidence is already there, and the hustle and the will, which are like the necessary ingredients before you actually start playing D. But once he's out there, you see him like even just basic things like fighting over the pick better, right? He's learning how to pick his right angles to get
Right.
around these screens and communicate. Um, and I think the last thing I'll say about it, I just like the intensity he's out there with. Like you could tell he's focused. He's really like trying to not mess this up, for lack of a better term. As you know, one of the youngest guys on the team, and you can tell he's earned those minutes clearly just by Billy Donovan's trust in him, but how highly Zach and DeMar speak of him. So yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see how that progresses as the season goes on.
Yeah, no, it's dope because he's one of those players you can just tell like he really, a lot of people say they really want to win, but you can just he's a winner. He like is not accepting the fact that the Bulls, even like the fact they lost these last couple games, like he doesn't like to lose type of thing. Like he has that wired in his DNA. He already has that role player mentality. You're like, I'm gonna take advantage of my minutes. Like I'm not just happy to be playing. I'm not happy to be playing in my hometown team. Like you don't even look at him. You don't even look at it as that, or like this is just a guy they're playing because like of different circumstances. He does so many other of the little things, and he's already poised the fact that and clutch where no moments rattling him. It's just cool to see like a rookie do that, and the fact that if you want to boil it down to the fact he's a second round rookie too, a guy who slid. It's another cool story. And it's cool that he's able to contribute already on the defensive end because that's something that holds back rookies from getting playing time in general. You can have, especially as a lower round pick, they usually go for guys who are decent, are good offensive players, but if they can't play defense, they're not going to get in the game or like have a big impact. But the fact that Io can come in and play multiple roles already, you can come in and fulfill the 1-2 spot or even play out there with Lonzo and Levine or different lines with Caruso, DeRozan. And he's getting a lot of experience playing against different types of scorers. So I think that's cool where right into the fire was just getting thrown on different types of guys. So yeah, like that Patty Mills matchup tomorrow is gonna be fun. We'll see how he
Yeah,
handles that.
yeah, no, that's one of the best ways to learn, though. Honestly, just get thrown into the fire. So, to your last point there, yeah, it's you're gonna get all these veteran guards, which will just help your experience tenfold. Ironically, not too unlike Kirk Heinrich. I feel like Kirk Heinrich got thrown into the fire
He
where
did.
he entered the league at a time where he just had night after night a tough matchup.
Yeah, he did. He
So,
definitely did.
and they're both wearing 12. That's why I said it was ironic. But it-
That was the last Bulls point guard to besides Derrick Rose to, but that was expected. Maybe not. I remember some people had like that was a debate that if he's gonna start that first year, because Kirk was still there, but like
right.
that was after D Rose with that preseason and like that huge last preseason game versus Dallas. I remember he hit that game winner or go ahead basket, whatever. Like that was okay. He has to start, but yeah, it's cool seeing another young Bulls guard like trying to learn that position. Guy that they drafted, I mean, um,
Yeah.
and also be able to play multiple positions too, like play like some 2 and 3 too. So yeah, let's take a look at the schedule though coming up for the week
Yes.
ahead. Got the
So we got Brooklyn tomorrow.
right.
Luca and Dallas on Wednesday.
Oh, that's
So
in
that should be
Dallas. No, it's Chicago. Chicago.
it's in Chicago, yeah. So but yeah, next two
Oh,
games are at
Luca and Dallas. I said Luca and. Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah. Next two games are at home. So Brooklyn on tomorrow, Monday.
Oh, we
Uh
start the trip this week. We start the
this
trip,
this
the
this
West
is the
Coast trip.
trip. Yeah, West Coast trip. So Friday, that should be fun. But Golden State.
I'm looking forward to it. I don't like that deep side before that. Before
I've
they're
just seen
great. They're looking good. They're looking good, but I want to see how we match with them. I really want to do. I really want to see how we match with them.
for sure, for sure. And then the Clippers on Sunday, and then Lakers the next day on Monday. So I think there's a good chance, based on reading the recent reports, that LeBron probably isn't going to be playing next Monday.
Yeah. I'm
But
debating on
none.
whether to go to the game or not, too. Like, I'm like on the fence. I
Right.
have to hit either one. I have to hit either the Clippers or the Lakers. But
I definitely would advise it if I were you. Yeah, at least one of those.
got to.
Yeah. But how do you think this next stretch is going to go, right? So the last time we kind of talked about their upcoming schedule, it was right before they played New York, Utah, and Boston, and that's really the trio of games I think we were looking at.
Yeah.
And so we saw how they did, right? Won 2 out of those 3 and really, was 2 points away from winning all 3.
Right.
So they, for the most part, lived up to those expectations, despite Patrick Williams, being out for the season. But then they lost 2 tough ones against Philadelphia that at the
Yeah.
same time they could have won had they come out with the right kind of energy, things of that nature. It's not like they were incapable of winning and Philadelphia just had their necks the whole time, right? Like they had a chance. It was just kind of more they beat themselves more than anything. So
Man,
that's how
yeah,
I
it
would look at
was
that.
exactly. It was right there for us. It was just the execution, I feel like. Just in bad spots. We just didn't execute as well as we should have.
Right, right. So yeah, that's kind of the rundown of, the last set of games before we left off. But with this upcoming set, once again, Brooklyn, Dallas, Golden State, both LA teams. How are you feeling? I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I'm feeling still confident, but I will say it's going to be very interesting to see how they respond.
Mm-hmm.
Because of, like I said, the similarity in how they lost both Philly games, it was very similar. They, like I said, bad start, came back, and then just didn't execute. You can't do that against the Nets. I really want to see how they match up with them. You're going against another superstar in Luka, and then the Warriors, how great they're playing. Another superstar in Paul George. You're playing elite talent this week as well. You're playing very elite talent. You're going to start, I think, a 5-game road trip. You don't get that off to the right start. I'm confident, but I do think the type of production we've had for the last couple of games is not going to fly. Someone off the bench has to step up, or collectively get at least 30 something bench points, hopefully, or a guy like Vooch, or Lonzo, big games, because you can't afford to do that against these elite teams, and especially when you go out on the road in the West. Those tough environments. Chase Center's gonna be crazy against the Warriors. Those role players, they feed off defense. They're a lot like us. They're a small team. They run around. They get out on the break, but they can hit threes. Like everybody off the bench for the most part can hit threes. And then obviously Steph. It's gonna it's gonna be fun seeing Steph or how we try and defend Steph with I'm sure Lonzo.
Right.
It's gonna
Yeah.
have
No.
that tough
The
assignment.
defense. The defense of that game is going to be very, very interesting to watch for sure.
But to go back to your point, that first Nets game tomorrow is going to be the big one because we have to see how we kick it off. Because responding off of a loss is huge. I don't think we did it obviously well on the first Sixers loss since we lost them again in the same
Right.
way. But
Right.
that next game against a different opponent, we got to set the tone. We got to come out early, play well, hopefully establish Vooch and get some shooters going because, if we can get a decent 3-point game on Alonzo or Zach catches fire, or maybe even Vooch knocks down a couple threes, maybe we can give ourselves some sort of a cushion where the Nets are maybe fighting back against us instead of us trying to do a comeback or staying into the game or within arm's reach like we were against the Sixers last game. So we have to
Yeah.
get off to a great start. That's important on this trip. Great starts in the first quarter.
Yeah. I mean, on the same note of that Brooklyn game, I definitely feel confident with Vooch trying to get his rhythm back against Blake Griffin at this point, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's someone where we can actually dump it back down into the post now. And I really hope they do that. As we kind of spoke about, they tried to establish Vooch in the post in that second Philly game, but I'd like to see them do a bit more. Like we can just try running the offense through Vooch completely in the first quarter. I would just say the whole first quarter. It's one of those things where Zach and DeMar, they're gonna get whatever shot they want anytime. You know what I mean? So it's
Exactly.
like there's really no rhyme or reason to go against doing what you can to get Vooch established first, just to get a little bit of rhythm going, right? So yeah, I feel like Blake Griffin's a good candidate. And then as well, like their front line isn't that scary with the exception of obviously Kevin Durant. Like I'm not going to do that. But Blake Griffin, Paul Millsap, LaMarcus Aldridge, Nick Claxton's out. So, those guys are all veterans and established guys, but at this point in time, they're not as intimidating as they used to be. So
yeah,
I think
not defensively. No.
yeah, especially not defensively. So I think this is a good opportunity as long as Durant and James Harden don't just have ungodly games or something like that for the Bulls collectively. I'll just say at this point to get back on track, especially because they're still at home. So they had some time to sleep in their own beds, kind of think about everything and regroup after, this mini little playoff series they had with Philly.
Yeah, this is the week for him to get back on track to that point. Look at these matchups, even with the Mavericks, they're gonna throw out Maxi Kleber, Boban. They're 5, 6, 7 centers they throw out there. The Warriors, they are pretty small. Vooch hopefully could eat in that game as well. Yeah. And then the same thing with the Clippers on Sunday with the Zubac. He's not a great defensive center, so Vooch should definitely exploit him. This is definitely a good stretch for him to get back on track. Say, for instance, he doesn't have a good game against the Nets, though, he shouldn't be discouraged, and they shouldn't be discouraged from giving him the ball and getting him touches the rest of the games this week because he has some favorable matchups, some matches where he can definitely get back on track. And that's my player to watch this week, too. That's the guy I'm watching for. I think he's going to be our most consistent player in terms of the production we're looking for out of him. Maybe not lead the team in scoring, but he's obviously going to lead in rebounding, and I think his points – I'm calling it. I'm gonna call he's gonna average 20 points this week.
Okay.
Average 20 a night. Yeah.
I hope so. we're all ready for it.
Yeah. Maybe wishful thinking, but man, look, it shouldn't be right. What am I even saying this? Like he can do that in sleep, or he should do that
easily. Yeah. I feel like he hasn't been to the line as much as recent either. It's kind of a multifaceted thing, but I'm paying very close attention to what Billy Donovan is saying when he's being asked about this after the games, and every answer is just rooted in being comfortable or being confident, and so that's just one of those things where you can't, from an analysis standpoint, you can't really predict when that's going to happen in terms of his offensive production. You know what I mean? It's
right.
Something like comfort level, you just have to let take its course. So that's the only thing. It's like, in theory, it's like, okay, he's had X amount of games to figure it out. He should be figuring it out now. It's like, you just never know. But hopefully, like you said, it's sooner rather than later.
Right. Okay. Do you want to go? Let's go down these matchups and single out players to watch for, or what we should look out for or anticipate each game this week. Start with the Nets. Is there a player on the Nets that we should look out for? What's a matchup that you're gonna circle?
Well, I think it's safe to say Lonzo's gonna start on James Harden. So that's one I'm kind of interested to see. I know James hasn't gotten off to the traditional start he may have in the past, and so I don't know if that'll allow Lonzo to get some early game steals and transition points, just based on some tough defense, maybe a little more aggressive than James Harden is expecting from this team. So I would say that matchup, but I think the obvious one, if you're just looking at the starting lineup, is KD. Right?
KD versus everybody.
He's just he's such a dynamic player. Yeah, I definitely see instances of them trying to attack Vooch by switching him onto KD and him trying to take him off the dribble. So there's going to be a lot of rotations and double teams for sure. We're going to need to kind of balance those situations out. Yeah, I would say those are the main ones. I'm not too worried about any of the other players. Definitely, you got to run out and defend for Joe Harris. He can get hot. Bruce Brown, he's going to be sneaking around the rim trying to get the little floaters off. So.
I was about to say, like, Screen dive to the rim like a big man. It's like 6'2". I'm kidding. It's interesting
Double
role.
sleeves.
Funny
Right.
player.
Yeah. So what about you? Anything beyond that you're curious? I know we did already kind of touch on the Patty Mills dynamic off the bench, but
Yeah, Brooklyn's bench versus Chicago's bench is going to be a game within the game for me, at least. I think that's going to be maybe a swing difference in the game if they can get a lot more bench production than us, especially with the bigs they have with LaMarcus Aldridge. You know, if you have him have a 12 to 14, 16-point game, it's going to be tough for us to win just because, like I said, we don't have that dynamic scorer who can even match that off the bench. So Zach would have to score 30 plus, or Vuce would have to be high 20s. Lonzo would have to be like high teens. The production had to come from elsewhere. But yeah, I'm looking at Patty Mills off the bench and LaMarcus Aldridge for sure. We got to shut those guys down and make sure that they don't get off.
yeah, I think so too. Dallas, how are you feeling about that one? Any matchups? We'll just say for now, outside of Luka, because that's that's a definite one.
You think Lonzo starts on Luka? He has to, right? I mean, Luka's playing the one this year, or he always plays the one. But Lonzo's gonna start on him, right?
Yeah, I think that's just our best option, even if it doesn't end up being the matchup for the rest of the game. It's like to start. I feel like it's just based on Lonzo's height alone. It's like let's just
I don't know if you remember, but Zach was playing decent defense on him for some certain select possessions last year. I remember he was doing a pretty decent job on Luka. I wonder if he's going to get some time on him as well.
But I definitely see that happening. But yeah, by design, I would think we'll try and have Lonzo start and maintain that.
I think for me, the guy in Dallas I'm looking at is Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson and then Tim Hardaway Jr. Jalen Brunson killed us last year.
I was about to say 30-something. Jalen Brunson is a prime candidate to get off against the Bulls. So I see what you mean now. Yep. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think along those lines, we need to shut him down with Caruso, and hopefully our bigger guards can do a decent job against him because he's not obviously he's not a big guard. But
wait, isn't Bullock in that position too? Doesn't he have good games against the Bulls?
He usually does. I think random games. Reggie Bullock.
Right. So yeah, I'm actually more concerned about those kind of people getting off than the typical Kristaps or Luka.
What about the Warrior game? Who do you look for in that game? Obviously, besides Lonzo chasing stuff around a million screens.
Right. I'm gonna go Jordan Poole because I know he's making some noise this season.
Yeah, I'm impressed with them. I'm impressed.
Yeah. He's just a lot more reliable. He's stepped up. You can tell he's taking a next step. I'll put it that way. So yeah, I'm curious to see how Jordan Poole performs. I can see him and Zach kind of getting into some dust ups at some point. So
yeah, he's emotional.
Right.
Not in a bad way. Not in a bad way.
But Damian Lee as well kind of has that quality to me.
Man, look, let's talk about guys like Bullock. Damian Lee for sure. Talking about random 19 points off the bench, 5 threes. Like, what? Like, come on. You can't let him get off and stuff.
Right.
I mean, he gamed us last year in Oakland. We should have won that game.
Exactly.
That game winner. So that's the guy I'm looking at also, man. Like, we cannot let Andrew Wiggins get off too. I would just be annoyed by that.
I would also like to remind you, don't forget about an Otto Porter Jr. revenge game.
Oh man, old friend,
old faces. You never know.
Hey, he's playing great, man. It's so funny. Like, I had some Warriors fans, like some friends, like asked me about Otto for the season. I'm like, when he plays, he's decent. Like, he can hit shots. Like, he can still defend decently. Like, the guy with the small ball 5, like, he's valuable. He's just usually hurt. But
he's just usually hurt. And so you can't get consistency that way.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully, he can stay healthy though. And they're playing great. They're 7-1 right now. Their record will look a little different, and ours will obviously by the time we play them on Friday. But that's a great early season test, and I mean, look, this whole stretch has been early season test with the Nets. You got the Warriors. Paul George is playing at MVP level right now with the Clippers. That's a guy. It's gonna be a fun matchup too. There's some dope matchups this week. Some really cool ones.
Yeah. Clippers. Who you got? Who you want to single out for that game?
Reggie Jackson.
Mm.
Yeah,
I feel
random.
like he's gonna be. Yeah. Reggie
You don't want a
Jackson.
big Reggie Jackson game.
He's gonna be doing what Dennis Schroeder was doing the other night. He's gonna be doing
Man,
those kind of things.
hunting for fouls and all that. I'm hunting for. I
Looks
think
like Morris is
that's
probably gonna be out, so maybe
oh,
Batum
Marcus
start.
Morris.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, maybe Batum.
Let me look at their box score the other day. I haven't really seen. It's funny, like being in LA. I've watched Clippers games the least. I don't really watch them that much, especially with no Kawhi right now. But Paul George is playing great. He's playing. I think he's leading league in scoring or close to him and KD are like pretty close. Yeah, Reggie Jackson, their last win, they won by 20 in Minnesota. 20 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Type of game you don't want him to get. Random people like, not random people, but Luke Kennard, you don't want him to have a big game. I would say those two for sure. Zubac, but I think he'll be neutralized by Vooch, and Vooch should just dominate that matchup, in my opinion. But yeah, I think you limit Reggie Jackson. They don't have a lot of big scorers, knock on wood, besides Paul George. So if Reggie Jackson doesn't get 18 to 20, they're going to have trouble kind of reaching that 100-point mark, too. So.
And then finally, the Lakers. So we already kind of talked about the fact that LeBron won't be playing. Davis is a little banged up. Westbrook is still going to be unleashed. So how do you feel about that matchup?
Lonzo back in LA. That to me is the Lonzo game. Lonzo should play well there.
That's
well, obviously DeRozan too. Let me stop. DeRozan.
Oh, that's the one you don't
Start
want
with DeRozan.
Yeah,
What?
DeRozan might go for 40.
I was about to say I want a high 30-point game or 40-point game from DeRozan for sure. There's a lot of like LA ties there at the Bulls, but yeah, I think Lonzo and DeRozan gotta show out there. They have to. And what they're without LeBron or AD, the Lakers too, they're struggling, but you don't want to be the team that they beat and get momentum on. And especially on this road trip, we don't want any team to embarrass us or get us down, and that's gonna be off of back-to-back. So it's that rare, I think, an afternoon game, and then afternoon game against the Clippers that Sunday, and then that night game against the Lakers that Monday. So it's gonna be weird scheduling wise, but I think we could take both games, honestly, especially with the Lakers kind of wounded and not playing well right now, losing to the Thunder twice. We should, we could take them down. I feel like, especially with if LeBron's not playing.
Don't forget about your one-day bull, Carmelo Anthony.
Man, he's been killing this year. Perfect role. He's the best player, low key.
Right.
Besides when
right.
AD's been healthy, but
Right. But when is that? Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, no, it should be an interesting stretch. I feel like we've been saying, or not just us, but everybody's been saying, "Oh, big test coming up for the Bulls. Oh, they got a big slate of games coming up." Like, I feel like they're gonna be saying that for a while. Because even after this game against the Lakers, they still got Portland, they still got Denver, New York again, and then they get a bit of a break. So it's just like there's really no rest for a while for the Bulls. Like, the fact that we're seeing them come out with low amounts of energy like that, really, they can't afford to do that going forward because it only gets tougher just in terms of the schedule.
Exactly, yeah. And that's all about just how you start the game off and, having a sort of plan or game plan that's conducive to good starts. And since we don't have like a crazy outside shooters in the starting lineup besides Zach and when Lonzo's hitting, we have to have a better, I think, game plan at the outset of games. But that's going to take them having time with that new lineup too. Javonte Green just got in that lineup. you kind of allude to earlier in the conversation about, like, there could be another change with Derek Jones or someone else entering the starting lineup to maybe get some more size in there or maybe more offensive firepower. But we'll see. That lineup hasn't played that much together. They still gotta get used to each other. Even just Vooch, DeRozan, and Levine with Lonzo. It's a lot of pieces, but a lot of parts that need to be like molded together. They have to have some time to figure things out and like actually get that natural chemistry going. But we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, that Brooklyn game is gonna kick it off. We'll see how the energy they come out in that first game. But yeah, I'm excited to see how they respond to the recent Philly losses.
Yeah. I'll just wrap it up by saying it's one of those things where this season is already testing this team in terms of just fortitude and chemistry and how to learn one another and react to adverse situations, things like that. So I'm glad all of this is happening early on. Of course, you never want to have injuries of Pat Will's magnitude happen this early
Right.
or at all. But even with something like that, right, they're learning how to pick up the slack, how to, develop that next man up mentality, IO included. Um, so yeah, I think some of these losses get a little dejecting in terms of just like the progression you want to see out of the team, but at the same time, I think it's good to remember them just as lessons and building blocks for this team to become the team they're going to be. So, yeah, a lot of big tests coming up, a lot of injuries to battle through, specifically talking about Zach LaVine. He still has that thumb, by the way, right? Like
Man, yeah, that's bothering him too. You can tell just
you
how like
you can
he
yeah,
grabs at it, his grimaces, and yeah, it's
yeah,
bothering him. To, I guess just play through it, but that's tough. That's really tough.
right. But despite that, like he's still producing because there's a point when
It
it first
is.
happened where people were, contemplating is he going to have to just sit out and miss some games, and obviously Zach said I'm not doing that. And he's playing through it and he's still producing. The things that he may need to work on are more related to just actual shot selection. It doesn't have to do with, oh, give it up in this spot or that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, that's promising in terms of it seems like he at the very least is learning how to adapt and play with that brace on versus he's just like his production dipped in half or fell off a cliff or something.
Right, right.
So, yeah. We shall see. A lot of big games coming up next week. Anything you want to plug on your end?
Oh yeah, I mean, I gotta plug the site, of course. check out check out Bulls from the Go. That's Bulls from the Go spelled how it sounds. For game recaps, all the podcast episodes gonna be up there. Got some more editorials coming soon, talking about the state of the team and just things to look out for in the coming weeks, especially with the West Coast road trip coming up. There's gonna be some fun stuff associated with that as well, with the history maybe of the circus trips. It's not really a circus trip anymore, but just the Bulls on the road in the past, their success or how good they've been. Stay tuned. As always, go to Delay Game Hoops. That's doghoops.com. And we got a lot of content coming soon on the site. New profiles, new highlight videos. A lot of stuff coming soon. Check it out. Bulls from the Go.